Hi, I'm Ashley Smith from the Farmington Hills Nature Center, and welcome to Nature in the Hills. Fall has just begun here at Heritage Park, and a lot of people think of all the beautiful colors that change on the tree. And a lot of folks at home are getting ready to put their gardens to bed for the winter. But here in the park, a lot of flowers are just reaching their blooms. So the one next to me here is called Sneezeweed, and it's still in flower. A lot of the flowers have fallen off and it's just starting to go to seed right now, but it's a beautiful yellow flower. The pollinators like the bees and wasps and butterflies use this as a nectarine or a place to find pollen. So a lot of times when we come in the morning, we see a lot of bees resting on this plant right here. So it's great for pollinators. It's a native Michigan plant. We have a lot of native Michigan plants that grow right here in front of the Nature Center, and we'll check out a couple more today. So I'm standing in the Nature Center's wildflower garden. You can find it right outside the front door. There's a lot of flowers that you can find all throughout the growing season. Right now in fall, there's a few things that I like to look for. One of those things is the mountain mint that's growing right in front of me here. The flower petals have just fallen off, but the seeds are in their prime right now, right on top of the plant. And the cool thing about mountain mint is if you reach down and you kind of roll the seeds in between your fingers and you smell, it gives off a really minty aroma. It's in the mint family. It has a square stem. And the plants that are growing around it, I have a few different species of aster. Asters grow all over the park. There are hundreds of species, but the fall is when you find them flowering. We can go explore some other flowers that grow right here in front of the Nature Center. The tall yellow flower behind me is called Riddles Goldenrod. We have a few different species of goldenrod that grow in Heritage Park, but Riddles Goldenrod is native to Michigan. And you can see that there's a lot of honeybees and other pollinators still using this plant as a food source even this late into the fall. Some of this plant has started to go to seed, and a lot of it's still flowering behind me here. It can get as tall as me and have roots that go deep down into the soil. On years when we have drought and little rain, it's still going to thrive in this garden. We're going to go check out some other flowers on the other side of the garden here. This other tall flower next to me here is called Canada Goldenrod. A little different from the Riddles Goldenrod we saw earlier in the garden. It's not quite as tall yet, but it's already going to seed. We have a lot of Canada Goldenrod in our park and all throughout Michigan. It's a native plant, but it tends to take over an area. So the Riddles Goldenrod's native and it attracts much more pollinators. Also in our garden, you can see that we have a sign that says our garden's maintained by volunteers. We rely heavily on these volunteers to make sure our garden's looking good and maintaining all of our native plants. It helps the wildlife and all the pollinators that call Heritage Park home. If you'd like to volunteer and help out in the gardens here at the Nature Center, please give the Nature Center a call at 248-477-1135. We're going to go check out some other plants that grow in the park. We've stopped here at this tall plant. It's called Pye Weed. It's a great plant to have in your home, especially in an area of your backyard that needs a lot of tall flowers that grow into a large area. This plant's just getting done flowering. It has really pretty pinkish purple flower petals, and it turns to seed these really fluffy seeds that you can see in front of me here. It attracts a lot of great pollinators, and it grows really well in Michigan since it's a native plant. Right behind the Pye Weed, we have common milkweed. And on all of our milkweed right now, the flowers are done, but a beautiful milkweed pod has formed. And on these milkweed pods, we see a lot of milkweed bugs and beetles. They're black and orange bugs that feed off of the milky sap on the plant. It's a cool sight to see in the fall. Eventually, these pods will dry out and burst open, and beautiful fluffy milkweed seeds will flow out of the pods and float around the park, spreading for sometimes miles. This is also the plant that monarch butterflies use for nectarine and a host plant. As we stop here by the bridge, you see this beautiful purple flower. It's New England Aster. It always flowers usually middle of September and through October, but it's got these brilliant purple petals with a yellow center. It's a type of aster. As I mentioned before, we have hundreds of species of aster here in Michigan. This is one of my favorite. It's called a composite type flower because it has the center with a lot of little petals composing the outside. This is great for pollinators like bees again, wasps, things like that are going to help spread this seed, but it adds a nice pop of color in September and October. As you walk along the river trail, you might encounter this plant. It's called Clematis or Virgin's Bower. It looks beautiful in a couple different seasons. In the spring, it gets beautiful white flowers, and it creeps and grows up tree trunks and shrubs. Right now in the fall, its seeds look like this. It looks almost like crazy hair growing around a seed head. A lot of animals will come up and use this as a food source, and you can find it all throughout the fall. Walking through some of the meadows we have here at Heritage Park, you can still see a lot of the flowers flowering. These are the areas that a lot of our bluebirds used as nesting spots in the spring and the summer. The flower below me here is called Blackeyed Susan. It's got the yellow petals and a brownish black center. A lot of animals will land on this plant, again, using it as a place for pollen or to find nectar. There's some more plants growing down the hill here. This is called Queen Anne's lace. A lot of people are familiar with it. It's also called wild carrot because if you pull it out by the roots smell a lot like carrots. Animals will use this again as a place to find pollen. A lot of flying insects will actually stop over and rest on these plants. You can see it make a really great resting spot. You can find the Queen Anne's lace growing all along the river trail and many of the other trails in Heritage Park. Usually flowers the end of summer and into the fall. In addition to beautiful fall colors on the leaves and beautiful fall flowers, fall is an important time for seed dispersal in Heritage Park. You can see around me here all of these flowers have their seeds. The one right in front of me is called thistle. It has beautiful purple flowers in the summer and into the fall, turning to this fluffy seeds in October. A lot of goldfinches will visit these plants and collect the seed fluff for their nests. But it's also important for the seed dispersal. You can imagine on a windy day this fluffy seed blowing in the wind, spreading the thistle for even miles around. Seeds are dispersed in many different ways. A lot of times in the fall you see beautiful berries of all different colors. Those are to attract animals to eat the berries, eventually finding a spot where they'll spread throughout the park. Another way seeds are dispersed is even on the water. Some seeds can float down the river for miles and disperse themselves in other areas. Seeds can also attach themselves to our clothes and an animal's fur. If I were to reach in here, a lot of these goldenrod seeds will attach themselves to my shirt, and as I walk farther down the park, they'll fall off and spread themselves that way. Thanks for exploring the wildflowers of Heritage Park with me today. The fall is a beautiful time of year to visit the park, to see the beautiful leaves change colors and the flowers turn to seed. For more information about the park, you can call the Nature Center at 248-477-1135. Thanks for watching this episode of Nature in the Hills.